In a world that moves fast and demands louder, there are men who think deeper, feel more, create from the quiet places within. This is Still Waters. Conversations for and about creative and sensitive men who refuse to skim the surface. Here we dive below the noise into the currents of meaning, purpose, and authentic masculine depth. With your hosts, Bill Allen and Marcus O'Day. Still Waters. Run deeper.
Hello and welcome back to Still Waters Podcast. I'm Marcus O'Day, along with my fellow host, Bill Allen. Today we're talking with Dr. Jed Diamond, and this is one of those conversations we've been looking forward to for a long time. Jed is one of the world's leading experts in men's health and gender medicine. But what drew us to his work isn't just his credentials, though those are very impressive. He's written 17 books that have been translated into many languages, including international bestsellers like The Irritable Male Syndrome, Surviving Male Menopause, and My Distant Dad, Healing the Family Father Wound. What really caught our attention is that Jed has spent decades asking a question that most of the medical establishment hasn't been willing to ask. Why are men dying younger, struggling more, and suffering in silence? His most recent book, Long-Lived Men, The Moonshot Mission to Heal Men, Close the Lifespan Gap, and Offer Hope to Humanity, makes the case that healing men isn't just about individual wellness. It's about the survival of our species. Jed doesn't approach men's health from a man-up or tough-it-out perspective. He understands that men have emotional lives, that father wounds run deep, that male menopause is real, in that the irritability and depression so many men experience has identifiable causes and solutions. Jed has been married to his wife, Carlin, for 45 years. They've raised 6 children together and now have 17 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. The most recent addition to their family is their grandson's baby girl named Chosen. This tells you something about the kind of man Jed is, someone who's not just writing about men's health from a distance, but living it, modeling it, and proving that men can thrive across a lifetime. So, let's dive into our conversation with Dr. Jed Diamond. I'm Marcus O'Day, and this is Still Waters Podcast.
Okay, welcome everyone. I want to welcome everybody to the Still Waters Podcast. And today we have as our guest Dr. Jed Diamond, renowned psychologist, also a prodigious author, and someone who has spent a lot of time working in and around men's groups, writing about that. And we're really honored to have him on the show with us today. Welcome, Jed. Good to have you. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to be here and great to delve into these creative and important issues.
Absolutely. All right, let's get started. I'll start it off with the first question. Lay the foundation for this because, Jed, you've been working with men and men's groups for decades. And in fact, one of the most impressive things about you that I know of is that you've been shepherding a men's group for 45 years now? Is it continuously running?
47. We've been meeting for 47 years now.
I've been doing men's groups for 4 or 5 years, and to think that someone has done one that's been continuously operating for that long is just a testament to you and your group. And I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from those experiences that you had. So let me start off with a question and kind of get us going here. You know, you've been working with men for a long time, and I'm sure you've got a lot of knowledge and information that you've collected over the year from the men you work with. What would you say now, today, in the 21st century, is the central core struggles that you're seeing and hearing about from men that you work with and talk to?
I have been doing this a long time. I've been a man for a long time. I have, in addition to my 17 books, I have 6 grown children, 17 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. And so I'm very involved in the world of men, women, relationships, and so on. And I'd say if there's a central theme that I see that people are struggling with or working to integrate in their lives really has to do with relationships. Everything from the relationship with ourselves, who am I, what am I here for, to our relationships, in our intimate relationships, and our partnerships and family, to our relationships with the larger communities of the world, and finally to our relationship with life on planet Earth. I think in many ways we've become very disconnected from all of these relationships, from our relationship with the earth, ourselves, and each other. And I think that's part of at least the work that I've been doing to help reconnect people with themselves and their world.
One of the issues that's come up recently for Bill and I is how, as a highly sensitive person or a highly sensitive man, how to approach relationships, because people seem to struggle more so with interpersonal relationships as sensitives than they might as just, I don't know what the other word would be, non-sensitive. So do you see a pathway through that sensitivity on how relationships might work better?
I think for me, I'll just speak for myself, that I've known from the time I was a kid, maybe as I was born, that I was different, that I had sensitivities that I just thought everybody had. I was sensitive to sound. Too much noise jangled me. I couldn't sleep unless the room was absolutely dark, because light got me where I couldn't sleep. I cried easily as a little boy. And it wasn't until, as many people, I think, read Elaine Aron's research or work, that I realized that it was a thing. It was real, and that people were exploring those issues. And I think what I've learned about sensitivity in terms of relationships is that we live in a world where we are clearly the minority. And in many ways, the world is pulling us away from our sensitivities, trying to mold us into people that we're not. We haven't understood it until recently. But the good news is that as we recognize that sensitivity is real, we can then start learning to engage ourselves, each other, and communities where we can realize the value, the depth, the positive sides, and how we can bring out the best of our sensitivities.
Absolutely. And some of the men that I've heard from personally, they're just finding their sensitivity now. And they may be later in years, like 70s, 80s, something like that, or midlife. But that's where that question stems from. It seems like they've been thrown off their game once they've named that sensitivity, and they suddenly feel like they're out of their depths in the relationship department. So thank you for responding to that.
That's an interesting point, Jed, about relationships, because one of the things that I think that I've noticed, especially throughout my life, and most recently in the last 10 years or so, as I started working in and around highly sensitive men, is the loneliness factor. In absence of having good quality relationships, whether they're with a partner, whether they're with family, or whether they're with a community, it seems that men have become more and more isolated. And is that something you're seeing? And is that one of the factors you think that brings that up as a kind of important topic for men?
I think what I've observed is that in some ways, I've felt as a highly sensitive man, have been isolated in many ways my whole life from others because I was different. The good part of that is I spent a lot more time tuning in to myself, a few close friends, tuning into the natural world. And now I think we're recognizing that loneliness is a symptom of our modern society, that we're so cut off from starting with our connection with the environment, with the physical world that has started probably 6,000 years ago.
Right.
And the loneliness in a way is a call to reconnect. The good part of being a highly sensitive man or any kind of highly sensitive person is that we recognize when there's a feeling state that is not positive. It calls us to do something. And for the first time, I think now there are communities like these, there are people like these, there's writing where we can come together to begin to connect in a positive way so that we're not having to either deny our connections or to just escape into the thousands of ways people can deny the hurt, the loneliness that's causing us pain. Now we can do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, having named your own sensitivity, how did that kind of reframe, or if did it, your understanding of your life and your work that you're doing?
I'd say probably the beginning for me, if there was like a formal or origin story of this, I spent a lot of time being a sensitive young man, just not being aware of even that it existed. And probably the thing that changed was with the birth of my first son.
Mm.
And when I held this little baby in my arms for the first time, I made a promise to him that I would be a different kind of father than my father was able to be for me, and to do everything I could to create a world where fathers were fully healed, fully engaged with their families, and were connected in ways that I felt needed to be connected. And it was then, in a sense, and still is, the deep reason why I still do this work. Now I have six grown children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, and I want this for everybody. And I think we all have some kind of awakening where we go, wait a minute, this needs to change. I need to change. I need to connect in different ways than my parents, my family, our communities in the past. And it's a wonderful journey to be on.
Sounds like it was a very positive thing for both you
Absolutely.
and your children and your family at large. So good.
Yeah.
Well done.
Jed, you and I have talked in the past and I've read some of your books. And I know, like with so many men of our generation, had sort of an estranged relationship with your father. And that does famously leave a wound that a lot of men have gone through this. I think one of the reasons why the movie Field of Dreams was so popular was simply because it addressed that. It wasn't about baseball. It was about fathers and sons and the relationships and doing some healing work to do that. How did you feel that relationship with your father impacted your relationship, as you were talking about, with your own children, with yourself, how you saw yourself as a father? And how can men who are experiencing a similar disconnect, possibly with a father that may not be there anymore, may be passed, or maybe they're still there and they're trying to find some way to reach out and bridge the gap between the two. How would you describe that for yourself, and how would you suggest people who are also having that same issue deal with that?
Yeah. I think it's not an uncommon issue. It certainly my story with that was when I was 5 years old, my father took an overdose of sleeping pills
Mm.
and was hospitalized. He didn't die, luckily, and was committed to a mental hospital. And my uncle went to visit him, and I was charged by my mother. I don't, it's a longer story why my mother didn't go, but I was sent with my uncle as a 5 year old every Sunday to the mental hospital
Mm.
with somehow to help my father. And as a sensitive child, all I knew was my father needed me. My mother needed me to be, as she described it, my my mom's little man to step up. And what I discovered years later when I read journal articles that my father had written was clearly the reason underlying his taking an overdose of pills was that he felt he could not support his family when I was born doing the work that he loved. And he was a highly sensitive man.
Hey,
And for him, not being able to he was a writer, he was a playwright, he was an actor in New York. For him not to be able to fulfill the role that was placed on him, for him felt like he was a failure and therefore the world would be better off without him. So for me, that set a tone both of when will it happen to me? Not if, but when will I go down that road? And what can I do not only to save myself, but to save other people? And it turned out to be, again, one of the turning points of my life. When I had then a son, it became even more, and then a daughter, more real to me. And I think there are many. I wrote a book, My Distant Dad, Healing the Family Father Wound, to help explain to myself and to share with others that healing journey that I went on, my father went on, and ultimately my son and my other children have been on.
okay.
And I, of course, identify with this father wound thing. Do you feel that this impacts sensitive men more deeply just through virtue of they being deep feeling individuals? How does that manifest? Does it change what comes up for them? Or is it pretty much the same across the board?
No, it's the truth is, I think we know this. If you're a highly sensitive person, whether you have a name for it or you just feel it, we're going to be highly emotionally reactive to anything that is an important event in life, positive or negative. It's why we're so creative on the one hand. It's also why we end up in mental health clinics or higher rates of suicide, higher rates of bipolar disorder. And the good side of that is only emerging relatively recently when we're able then to allow these sensitivities to be recognized, and then we can then do something in a positive way to take care of ourselves in a way we haven't, to take care of each other, to be able to get help where in the past we were labeled, we were locked up, and people like my father and still going on now who don't have the support end up feeling there's something absolutely broken or wrong about them and they need to be somehow excluded, or they feel very guilty or very hurt or very angry with the world. And so it's changing now in ways that just give my heart an opening for joy in what we're able to do now.
I know what the moment that I was able to name that sensitivity, because like you, my experience extends all the way back to childhood. I grew up in a very large family. I ended up raising my 13 siblings because of mental health issues in both my parents. The moment that I read that Dr. Aaron's book, it had a name. And the moment that name was appeared to me in my mind, I knew I would be okay. I knew that I could handle what is coming. I appreciate the work that you do, and I definitely appreciate the work that Bill has done in this area with sensitive men. I think it's life-changing for me, and I hope that it is the same for many others. But yeah, finding joy, finding things that bring you meaning or fulfillment, I think that's very important. And it's especially important, I think, for sensitive men, because
Indeed.
we have come through the same things that others have, but our feeling about it is much different.
Yes.
You know, that the point about sensitive men is that, and I think there's some, as Jed has said, there's some joy in knowing that the way you have been throughout your life, which may have been a bit of an outlier depending on where you grew up and who you were around, but to realize it's a thing, and it's a normal thing. A certain percent of the population has this temperament traits, and to find out that it not only is a thing, but it's also a gift too, because it raises your awareness about your environment, about what's going on, how you relate to people. You have increased amounts of empathy and so forth that a lot of other people don't have the same qualitative amount of that. But I want to touch on something, Jed, that you brought up a second ago, and it was something rang true with me. When you were saying that your mom sent you off to the hospital with your uncle, and assuming that she wanted you to be her little man at 5 years of age, that happens quite a bit to young boys. I know and I was a little bit older when I lost my dad, I was 17, but I don't know how many people came up to me and said, "You're the man of the house now." There's a responsibility that goes along. Sometimes a kiss when the father is out of sight or has passed away or whatever. But one of the questions I want to ask you is about this, is that we don't, as a society, generally have any kind of ritual, initiation process that helps boys transition not only physically, but mentally into adulthood and into manhood. And a lot of cultures have that. A lot of religious groups have a ritual for a boy to go to manhood. But as a culture, I would say American society or Western society, there seems to be quite a lack of rituals and initiations, if you will, to help guide boys from that transitional point from being a boy to being a man. I know you've got lots of thoughts on that, so I want to just turn it over to you and hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah. Back up a step with this sensitivity that drew my mother to want me to step up to be a man. I think there's part of the sensitivities that women feel, mothers feel, others feel, that in some way we are able to connect on an emotional level. And it's unfortunate if you don't understand that or you're not in a situation where you can be supported. We often get pulled into roles way before we're understand or capable of it. And what we need is understanding. And what we need in the larger society, certainly in modern world, for most of human history, there were rites of passage and initiations for, particularly for young men, and we have lost that. Fortunately, it's become rebirthed in many ways. I've worked with numerous groups and luckily had been through my own rite of passage initiation years ago, which allowed me to heal. The men's group that I described that's been together for 47 years now. It's interesting, my wife Carlin will tell you that one of the reasons that we have had and continue to have a successful 46-year marriage is because I've been in a men's group for 47 years. And the men's group started as an initiation weekend that we all were part of and went through, and we have that unity and connection that more young men and men of all ages, because we need initiations into elderhood and all different parts of our rites of passage. And these are beginning to happen more and more now. And I've experienced them, I share them, I take other people through them, I work with others that are ready to embark on that journey.
And I totally identify with this. My best friend as a young man was this Jewish kid that lived a block over, and we became really good friends. And I asked him, I said, "Can I go through your bar mitzvah with you and just learn from that?" And I think that for me was a survival tool, but I recognized that I needed to graduate out of childhood and into something bigger. And so what you're saying definitely resonates. And I agree, Bill. I think we don't have those opportunities anymore like we used to. Boys had Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, and other kind of groups that would help transition into manhood, but those don't seem to be as prevalent these days.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about the Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout at one point, but it was my understanding, I was doing some research on a book, masculinity, and Boy Scouts were a counterpoint to the fact that at the end of the 18th, 19th century, men were concerned that boys were around women too much and they needed to be around men. And so the idea of taking them out on expeditions with other boys and with grown-up men was a ritualistic thing. But you're right that they don't seem to have the same weight that they used to have in the past, which is unfortunate. But I think it is important. And Jed, it's really important that you brought up that idea that getting together in men's groups, and in many ways, is a rite of passage and can be a rite of passage as well, as men express their feelings, open up, and that kind of thing. Is that something you've experienced in running men's groups over the years, that there's a certain liberation about doing that?
I think many people have talked about men don't feel as deeply, or when I've written 17 books now, and getting books published has always been difficult. And the scuttlebutt in the book world for years until fairly recently is that men don't read self-help books. Men's self-help books are called business books, and they're all about how to be successful in life and make a lot of money and so on. But the truth is, as we well know, and sensitive men know it better than others, is we feel deeply, and we need to allow ourselves to connect with each other in deeply emotional ways. And if given the opportunity, and I just see it over and over again, is that men can't wait to open themselves to other men in safe environments. And that's a really key point, that there are environments that are not safe for emotional expression. And sensitive men know that and will pull back. So there has to be a container of safety, a container of really allowing people of all the different flavors of any group to be able to be themselves, to open themselves up in ways that can allow us to be who we are, and to have the kind of transitional support through all stages of our life, from boyhood to adulthood, from adulthood into, I write and talk about, into what I call super adulthood, when we are ready to take on leadership and elder positions in the world. I just turned 82 this year, and I've been a somewhat designated elder for a number of years. And now I have the joy of teaching and training and helping other men through this journey together.
And we certainly appreciate that too. I want you to know that. Yeah.
And the female population, they do have kind of the crone image of the wise woman who brings women through their lives in ways, teaching them what they need to know. And having an elder like yourself doing that same work with men is incredibly important and valuable. Good for you. I'm so glad you're here today because we get to hear about it. How did you get started with men's groups? I know you've been doing it since the 60s, 70s, or is it after that?
My beginning was with the birth of my son in 1969. So that's when my first son was born. And then later in 1979 was the formal men's group experience. And then over the years, I've met and been part of leadership groups all over the world where we've put on gatherings. And what you brought up about the male-female dynamic that I think is part of evolutionary history, males and females. In one of my books, I want to know, when did maleness and femaleness begin? How far back in evolutionary history were there male and females? And it turned out it's 1 billion years old. For male elk don't have any problem knowing the difference between male elk and female elk and what they do. It goes all the way back to one-celled animals that were not male or female, but males, and then a different little sperm and egg became male, females, and that's evolved over time. So this is a very ancient dynamic that I think we can get reconnected with, need to get reconnected with, and highly sensitive people recognize both the truth of this dynamic of maleness and femaleness, and also how we need the support system to bring out the best of this evolutionary trait that is part of our genetic heritage.
Well, Jed, do you believe that? I'm glad you brought up that maleness, femaleness dynamic, which I think is almost a universal theme with humans, whether it's energetically a yin yang kind of thing, or whether it is biological, whatever. Do you feel today that we're getting more disconnected from that because of a rise of, I hate to call it a movement, but this manosphere movement that talks specifically about separation, men and women, about the fact that moving back to a traditional type male masculinity type thing where men dominate, women are supposed to be submissive, et cetera, which is not the way our world is right now.
Right.
It's going in contrast to that. So I think it's important for a lot of men to understand that femaleness is also a part of you as well, that nurturing, that wanting to be involved in terms of the way you think and the way you process information is also a part of men as well. And to point this into a direction of a question, I want to say, how do you feel about what's going on today as far as thought leaders coming up in the manosphere world, trying to create that kind of dynamic that I think is not really embracing the male
Yeah.
and female side of all of us?
Let me answer it, a little long answer in a story that I'll tell.
Okay.
Going back to my early days of working in the world of gender, my broad field, I call it gender specific health, that looks at these issues. And probably it's 30 years ago now, if I take you back to a gathering of men and women in San Francisco at the Palace of Fine Arts. And the two main speakers were Michael Mead, some of you know who he is, a storyteller, and a woman named Clarissa Pinkola Estes, a woman who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves. And the name of the gathering was Ovarios y Cojones.
Got it.
Well, yeah, you get the translation,
Yes.
Ovarios y Cojones. And in the midst of this day-long workshop, and Michael told stories, and it was a very lively, probably 300 or 400 people. And Clarissa, towards the end, said she had a poem to share. Nobody knew she did poems, but she shared this poem, which I'd like to share with you because it speaks to, I think, the holistic dynamic that had been emerging. And her poem was called Father Earth. Father Earth, in which she just said the words, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And then she offered this. She said, Father Earth, there is a 2 million-year-old man no one knows. They cut into his rivers. They peeled wide pieces of hide from his legs. They left scorch marks on his buttocks. He did not cry out. No matter what they did to him, he did not cry out. He held firm. And now he raises his stabbed hands and whispers that we can heal him yet. We begin the rolls of gauze, the gut, the sutures, the grafts. Slowly, carefully, we turn his body face over. Underneath him, the old woman, his lifelong lover, is perfect and unmarked. He has laid upon his 2 million-year-old lover all this time, protecting her with his old back, with his old scarred back. And the soil beneath her is fertile and black with her tears.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Father Earth.
Wow.
You can imagine the reaction. There were people stunned, were in tears. I've shared this probably with 100 or more men's gatherings since then. And the reaction is always the same. My God, finally there's a woman who understands what it means to be male. and the dynamic of how life is supposed to be, of this male energy and female energy, and the male being the protector, rather than in contrast to what we're seeing in some cases in our government, in the United States, and many parts all over the world, this fearful, uninitiated maleness that is really very wounded, very cut off, and as a result sees the world as places to occupy, to dominate, to control. And it is recognized, I think, by anybody who sees the truth of this, that this is a dynamic that is an old way of being, but there's an older way of being that is represented by Father Earth that is really calling to be recognized. And believe me when I say the sensitive men rising movement is going to reconnect us all to this possibility. And I think we can all feel the energy of both of the poem, the time, the storytellers, the healers that are in the world now that are calling this energy back for everyone.
Do you think the sensitive male population then is meant to teach current society how to be different as men? Do you see that as a role that we might take on, or that we might just step into in
Well,
this
I do.
society?
I think it's critical. As Bill knows, a few years ago, there was a film in the making that was called Sensitive Men Rising. You all know about
Mhm.
that. And I was asked by the filmmaker, Will Harper, to be interviewed at the time as the film was getting developed. And I was excited because I saw that possibility of a movement, not just a
Mhm.
film, but a calling to all peoples, but men in particular, to rise up. That this is an ancient way to be in the world, probably 2 million years old, and we've been around all of these sensitivities for 2 million or more years, but we're being called now to speak this truth to the larger world because we're needed now more than ever. We really need to counteract this very old idea of domination and control that is really destroying humanity. The world will be fine. That kind of mentality will wipe out the human part of the species. And we who hold the life saving opportunities are called to connect with women, to connect with everybody. And Sensitive Men Rising as a movie, a movement, is something that I think is calling us all to step up in our own ways.
Thank you for
Absolutely
that.
agree with you there, Jed, 100%. And I like to think always has stuck with me the one comment that Dr. Earn had made in one of her books somewhere, one of her blogs, about the evolutionary quality. And I hammer this in every time I talk about high sensitive people. The reason nature bakes us into the population is for that very reason, is that awareness. I find it extremely ironic that there's a movement afoot of trying to keep people from being unawake or not woke, which really is saying don't become aware. Because when you become aware of these things that you're speaking about, and that poem just most lovely to express that, and the way you did it was amazing too. That's what awareness is, being aware of who we really are and what we can really be. And I think as sensitive men and sensitive women, that's one of our roles. And I think that's absolutely right. Sensitive Men Rising was a step definitely in that direction. And as sensitive men, we all need to pick up that banner and carry it forward. Not in a warlike way, but in a way of modeling, of showing this is the
A
way
new
we can
way.
be. The new way,
Yeah.
exactly.
A new way. Yeah. A new way of being, I think, catches that zeitgeist.
Absolutely. Jed, this has been really lovely. always enjoy talking to you. I wondered if you have some specific advice for highly sensitive men that, as we are talking about our nature, and a lot of these men I think, are waking up to this reality, but they're not sure exactly what to do next. They're not sure if they can do it. They've been told their whole lives, you're too sensitive, you're too weak, you're too emotional, you're too whatever. And yet they're starting now to waken up to this idea of the gifts of awareness that they have. So is there any advice as an elder that you would like to share with them?
Yeah, what I share with my own children and grandchildren, great grandchildren, is that part of this sensitivity and this evolutionary quality that has created human beings that have been here from the beginning is that we don't operate in isolation, that we're taught by the larger society that somehow we're different, or the people that succeed are the lone people that go off into the sunset on their horse all alone or slay dragons or what have you. But the truth is, humans and all other animals are part of communities. They're part of a flock if you're a bird, all the different ways in which animals come together, and humans come together in tribes, come together in groups, come together with others. So if there's one thing I would tell people is you're not alone, but you need to connect with others, particularly now when sensitivity is, in a sense, getting pushed aside, to join a men's. I have one of my books over my shoulder. It's called 12 Rules for Good Men. And the first rule I suggested in the book is join a men's group. Because we've been part of men's groups from the time 2 million years ago. So this is not a new thing. It's a recognition that we need to be part of a group together, both for support and because that's what makes us human. That's what makes us part of a family. And then to connect with others. We have an opportunity now that we never had before. We have books out, like books you've written, Bill and Marcus. We've got now resources, and we've got a calling. There's a reason we're here, and we have a job to do. We have a very important opportunity to do something good for ourselves, each other, and the world.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Jed, why don't you share? Are you working on a new book now? You got 17 out there. Have you got something in the works, or are
Well,
you
I do have
working
a
on
couple
a
of things
project?
in the works that are new, but not a book. I write articles every week I have a website, menalive.com, that people can visit me, and if you subscribe, I write an article every week. But what's new for me, and I invite any of your community to join with me, to connect with me, is I've been, for the last probably 3 or 4 or 5 years, been doing teaching and training of people who, in a sense, the next group of people that want to work in the field. I've been doing that. And for the first time, I'm opening up my personal counseling again, which I had done for years, for men in particular, but I work with families, but men in particular, and certainly many highly sensitive men who want to work personally with me, either through counseling, which I do, or I have another process where if you go to my little handle on my Men Alive site, my title that I have taken on is founder and director, but VHS. And the VHS stands for the ways that we can connect in healing groups and can reach people in sensitive ways and caring ways, and to help people change their lifestyles. I'm opening just my heart and my practice to people who want to connect in visionary, healer, scholar. That's the VHS, visionary,
Okay.
healer, scholar. And so people often come and I give them readings, if you will, intuitive questions. What do I do about this? and I draw on their sensitivity, my own, and visions for what do you need to do next with your work? How do you deal with a relationship? So it's an opportunity if people want to connect with me that way. The other thing, just I'll say this for any people who watch this podcast or have connected with you all, is that anybody who would like to write to me, I have a document, I call it the Good Man Manifesto, that kind of puts out in one kind of package a lot of the ideas that we've shared today. And if anybody would like to email me at jed@menalive and ask about that, I'd be happy to give people a free copy of that and just be open to anybody that just like to write and say hello or connect with me. I'd very much enjoy that. And I'm very open at this stage to connecting personally with people again after having been in the teaching training mode for a number of years.
Yeah.
That is our good fortune that you are back hanging the shingle out again so that people can reach you directly. I want to ask you a real quick question,
Sure.
Jed. Do you have any kind of training materials or things that you've written about or pamphlets or anything about running a men's group? Because obviously it's something you know how to do very well. And it is for those who don't know how to run a men's group, who would like to try and start a men's group. It can be a kind of a daunting task because getting men together, getting them to feel safe and comfortable, getting them to talk, getting them to commit to coming. I imagine that's a skill set that has its own
Yeah,
processes involved. Do you have something like that's available for men who are
I do.
interested?
It's part of the what I have in the Good Men Manifesto. The truth is it's a lot simpler than people think to give a guided. So the simple part is bringing people together. So it can be as simple as inviting another guy. I started a group just asking another guy, you want to come and we'll explore together. And then the two of us picked a third person, and then so it can be as simple as bringing people together and then being willing to share in a safe place, having some basic rules of safety that you keep confidential, things like that are pretty obvious, and that you share personally and you listen deeply. So that part is pretty simple, and I can send anybody my basic guidelines. Where the juice is the kind of helping people, and I've done hundreds of just these little visionary sessions. How do I do this when this comes up? How do I deal with that? We're at this point in the group and now something's come up, and those are the little just guiding process supports that I'm always happy to do.
Fantastic. And I believe me, I suggest that any of you that are watching this go out and look at his bibliography, and you can't go wrong just about any book you pick on there. But what I loved about your style of writing, Jed, is it's very honest, it's very vulnerable, it's very real, and very relatable. I highly recommend that everyone check out some of Jed's books. You'll definitely benefit from that. Marcus, is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
I am reading the 12, was it the 12 Rules book you
12
wrote?
Rules for Good Men, yeah.
Great
Yep.
book.
Started that one this morning. So just in anticipation because I'm looking forward to diving into that. But no, thank you so much for coming and sharing your wisdom and your processes and opening yourself up to taking on even more in this
Super.
direction.
It's been a joy being with you, and I hope we can continue the dialogue. And I hope my genuine offer to connect with anybody that sees this to send you this document that's always grows of what I call the Good Men Manifesto that just pulls together a lot of the ideas, a lot of the evolutionary principles that I use in my own life and my own practice, and just stay in touch. We need each other.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Jed. I really appreciate you being here and sharing with us today. And we'll have you back. I have a feeling we'll continue the dialogue certainly here. I think that's going to be a wrap for us today. So everyone stay tuned for our future episodes. I hope you enjoyed this one. And please do reach out to Dr. Diamond if you have questions or want to pick up some of the information he has. Anyway, thanks a lot.